Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Wednesday, January 5th, 2011. A lot of things going on today. I want to get right into it. This first story is out of MiddleEastMonitor.org. Here's the headline. It says, Jewish conference calls for building third temple on ruins of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Wow. That's going to get our Muslim friends in an uproar, I guarantee you. This came out today. A conference of ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jews in West Jerusalem has called for the destruction of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the building of the third temple on its ruins. In response, the Aqsa Foundation for Endowment and Heritage warned of an escalation of the attempts by the Israeli occupation authorities and its arms, conferences such as this, to promote construction of the so-called Third Temple at the expense of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. In a press release, the foundation said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is behind these calls. The Jewish group pushing for the temple have urged Netanyahu to fulfill his promise that in the event of his re-election he would approve and arrange for Jewish prayers to be held in Al-Aqsa. Ultra-Orthodox Hasidim have become more active in recent weeks, targeting Al-Aqsa Mosque, desecrating it, and working towards its Judaization. Reports and pictures from the conference held on the 30th of December have been published in a number of right-wing and ultra-Orthodox websites. The conference, it is claimed, was held especially to address the temple issue. Its program included demonstrations of the rituals to be observed in a new temple. The organizers presented the conference as if such rituals would be taking place in situ sooner rather than later. Right-wing Israeli groups have demanded that the Israeli Prime Minister makes the necessary arrangements with the police so that Jews can pray inside Al-Aqsa. Letters dating from 1995 to 2005 have been produced as evidence of Netanyahu's promise to facilitate such prayers if he became Prime Minister for a second term. He was re-elected in 2009. Successive Israeli governments have played down claims that Jews are planning to demolish Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and replace the historic Islamic sites with a Jewish temple, despite the overwhelming evidence that many organizations within Israel and in the Jewish diaspora have that as their prime aim. Some ultra-Orthodox Jews say it is forbidden for Jews to pray anywhere with Al-Aqsa Sanctuary, as they have no idea where the Holy of Holies lies. Historically, only the high priest of the temple was allowed to enter that sanctum. Wow, that's pretty amazing. You know, there will be a third temple, because John in Revelation was told to go measure it. Okay, the second temple, there's been two there already. The second one was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans, and there's not been one there ever since. Now, there will be a third one, because in 2 Thessalonians, I believe it's 2 Thessalonians, we're told that the Antichrist will appear on a wing of the temple and claim to be in charge there and actually claim to be God. I take that verse as literal. There will be a temple there. You know, in Revelation, that was written in about 95 AD, so it was 25 years after the second temple was already destroyed. So a lot of people like to say, oh, you know, John was told to go measure the temple that was there. No. That was written 25 years after the second temple was already destroyed. So when he was told to go measure the temple in the outer courts, that was a future temple, one that's not yet there, one that will be allowed to be built when we do have this confirmation of the covenant, which is the peace agreement with Israel and the rest of the world. They will be allowed to build their temple there. Now, I've heard from Chaim Rickman, who is the leader, the rabbi leader of the Jewish Institute, the Temple Institute, and they have said they have plans for the temple, and they can build it with all the current structures there except for one tiny minaret that they'd have to take down. Other than that, they don't have to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock. So for this news to come out, that's pretty huge. You know, the Muslims like to say we're in a holy war, and I have to give them credit because truly they're correct in that assessment. We are in a holy war. And we know who's going to win if you believe the words of God, this book right here. And I believe every word from beginning to end. I also know in Psalms 83 that it lists a number of nations and calls them enemies of God. Today, they are all Muslim majority nations. So, it all started with Abraham and his two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, who he had with his slave, Hagar, and Isaac, who he had through his wife, Sarah. And ever since those two have been born, we've had this confrontation going on. It is building to a head right now, though, because we're approaching those times right before Jesus returns. So, very important that you know who he is and that you trust him as your Lord and Savior. Here's a story out of Chron, CHRON.com. It says, natural gas to flow forth off Israel. A Houston energy company may have altered the economic landscape in one of the most troubled regions of the globe. A natural gas discovery off the coast of Israel by Noble Energy may reshape that country's economy and open the eastern Mediterranean to investment by U.S. oil companies. Last week, Noble Energy reported results that confirmed estimates of 16 trillion cubic feet of gas in the Leviathan field. The discovery means that Israel, a country that imports most of its natural gas from Egypt, is about to become a major producer in the region, said Delphi Global Analyst Group founder David Wormser, who provided Noble with strategic analysis on the project. He said the field is far beyond anything that Israel's economy can absorb over any reasonable period of time. He said, this is essentially going to lead to Israel as an exporter of gas. Hook in the jaw. I'm telling you, that's the hook in the jaw Ezekiel spoke of. Earlier last year, Noble confirmed another big find, the Tamar field, which is believed to hold about 8 trillion cubic feet of gas. That field and another recent discovery are enough to meet Israel's domestic energy needs, said Michael Economides, an energy expert and professor at the University of Houston. He says it's really a game changer in many ways. Israel lacks the capital and technical expertise to develop the fields, which means it's likely to turn to Western oil companies. At the same time, other companies may snap up offshore leases looking to cash in on Noble's coattails. Okay, so Israel is going to be a huge exporter of natural gas. They will no longer need Egypt's gas, and probably with Israel having their own, they will export it to other areas of Europe, and all the other countries that have gas that they're supplying, like Russia, their prices will probably have to drop. You think that'll upset the Russians? Oh, you better believe it. You better believe it. This is a game changer, people. This is a huge prophecy. Here's something out of Arutz Sheva. UN nixes Lebanese attempt to stop Israeli offshore drilling. The United Nations has rejected an attempt by Lebanon to stop Israel from drilling for oil and natural gas in the Mediterranean. Why would Lebanon want to stop them? UN spokesman Martin Nazarki said today that the mandate of the UN Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL for short, does not include delineating maritime lines. We're talking about two different things, coastal waters and a disputed boundary. He added that the UN position was what UNIFIL said. Lebanon submitted its request to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in the wake of last week's news that confirmed preliminary estimates of gas reserves in the massive energy field discovered beneath the Jewish state's northern coastal waters. Lebanese Foreign Minister Ali Shami sent a letter yesterday asking Ban to do everything possible to ensure Israel does not exploit Lebanon's hydrocarbon resources, which fall within Lebanon's economic zone and delineated in the maps the foreign ministry submitted to the United Nations in 2010. Okay. But the UN has said, hey, we're not going to stop them. They can drill for gas. They can drill for oil. That's their land. That's their territory. They can do so. Wow, the UN siding with Israel on something. I'll write that one down. Let's see. Today, dear diary. Anyway, interesting story. I'm not going to read the rest of it for time's sake. Got some other things I want to talk about. Here's something out of Haaretz that says the EU pushes Mideast talks as no alternative to a negotiated deal. The foreign policy chief in the region to meet with Israeli and Palestinian leaders and expected to press Israel to reopen access to Gaza. Progress in Middle East talks is urgently needed because there is no alternative to a negotiated deal, the EU foreign policy chief said as she prepared to visit the region today. The European Union has grown increasingly critical of the lack of progress in the talks between Israel and the Palestinians, but has so far lacked the leverage to bring the two sides to talks. Urgent progress is now needed towards a lasting Israeli-Palestinian peace, and the EU will continue to support all efforts towards that goal, Catherine Ashton said in a statement issued overnight. There is no alternative to a negotiated solution. On Wednesday and Thursday, she is due to meet with Israeli and Palestinian leaders and to push for Israel to reopen access to the Gaza Strip. She said, "We want to see the state of Israel and a sovereign and viable state of Palestine living side by side in peace and security." Like that's going to happen. You see what happens when Palestinians get some land close to Israel. Look at the Gaza Strip. They lob rockets and mortars into Israel nearly every day. Okay, you think there's going to be peace and security? I tell you no. And anyone that's giving up land for peace, I believe to be a fool. Sorry, I don't pull punches. I say it the way I see it. Of course, both sides are blaming each other for the stalemates in negotiations. And, again, let me just reiterate, there will be no peace there until Jesus comes. Here's something out of KYODO News. Kyodo News. China military eyes a preemptive nuclear attack in event of a crisis. The Chinese military will consider launching a preemptive nuclear strike if the country finds itself faced with a critical situation in a war with another nuclear state, internal documents showed today. Now, this is a newly revealed policy because China has they've called lowering the threshold of nuclear threats. This contradicts China's strategy of no first use of nuclear weapons under any circumstances. Here they're changing their strategy, and this is going to fan concern in the United States, Japan, and other regional powers about Beijing's nuclear capability. Wow, that's another game changer. We're seeing a lot of game changers today. Here's something out of theblaze.com. Ninth Circuit Court rules a war memorial cross to be unconstitutional. A cross perched atop the Mount Soledad War Memorial in San Diego, California, was deemed unconstitutional yesterday by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, but the court did not explicitly say the landmark must be removed. Let me tell you something. This is part of the beginnings of the crackdown on Christians. Okay, we know we're going to be persecuted in the end days. This is just the start. You've seen all these atheists wanting to take God out of everything, put these ads up, I'm okay, and all these other people that don't know God are okay too without God. We're going to be targeted, so we need to stand strong in our faith and resist anybody that wants to make us believe otherwise. Okay, we know Jesus Christ is the truth, and no one can tell me any different, and I will proclaim that great good news all over the world until I have no breath left in me. Here's something a little strange. MSNBC.com says, court says no warrant needed to search cell phones. The California Supreme Court ruled Monday that police can search the cell phone of a person who's been arrested, including text messages, without obtaining a warrant, and use that data as evidence. Wow. Okay, so unlawful search and seizure just out the window, right? Seems to me that during this president's administration, a lot of the Constitution is just being torn down and thrown out the window. Amazing. Here's something that caught my eye out of Bloomberg.com. Of course, I've seen this story on AOL, on CNN, on Fox, ABC. It's all over the place. World food prices surged to record levels, passing levels that sparked the 2008 riots. World food prices rose to a record in December on higher sugar, grain, and oilseed costs, the United Nations said, exceeding levels in 2008 that sparked deadly riots from Haiti to Egypt. Okay, that reminds me of Revelation 6, verse 6 says, Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a day's wages. A quart of wheat for a day's wages. In the King James, it actually says, under the headline of third seal, scarcity on the earth, that a quart of wheat for a denarius, which was a unit of measure of money at the time. And we're seeing all these birds and fish die all over the world. It's not just in America. It is all over the world. Sweden, all over Europe, all over America. We're seeing fish and birds dying at amazing record levels. Is that creating a scarcity in our food supply? Telling you people, we're living in the end times. You need to know Jesus Christ as your Savior if you want to see the end of it and pull through. Okay, we've been talking, my new series is all about suffering. Thought I'd start out a new year with talking about suffering. Those of you who are getting your credit card bills, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about suffering. In Matthew 7:25, it said, the rain comes in torrents and the flood waters rise and the winds beat against that house. Now, we're prone to making a serious mistake as it relates to suffering, and that is believing that suffering is supposed to be an exceptional or a strange feature in our lives. It works like this. Something comes crashing into our world, and because we're accustomed to comfort and peace, we see it as a foreign object that requires immediate removal. And when it isn't removed, we find it strange and unsettling. This shouldn't be happening to me. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my life? I'm living in chaos. Oh no. Well, the answer is nothing. Okay? Nothing is wrong, because trials are part of the package of being human. Earth is an imperfect place. God made it perfect, but since man is living on it, it's now imperfect. And that means the rain will come in torrents, floodwaters are going to rise, and winds are going to beat against us. Trials are inevitable because that's just the way life on this planet works. Let me just go to something, though. I'm not sure which verse it is exactly. Is it Matthew 8? Sorry, I'm a little scattered today. But I believe that it was in Matthew 8. Oh, man. Now I'm kind of lost here. Matthew 8:26. Okay, this was when the wind and the waves obeyed Jesus. And Matthew 8:26 says, But he said to them, Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Let me just present to you, when you are in your storms of life, and trust me, we're all going to have storms. If you're not in one now, you'll be in one pretty soon. Jesus can calm them all. Okay? There is an answer for the storms in life. It's Jesus. Trust me on this. We can try to protect and insulate ourselves against suffering, but sooner or later it's going to catch up with us. Whether it's unexpected or anticipated, something in life is going to break. There's going to be a discouraging diagnosis, the loss of a loved one, or a can't-miss opportunity that misses the mark in a major way. There's going to be something, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. So what does that mean for us? It means the objective shouldn't be to avoid suffering at all costs. Instead, we should understand that it's going to happen and take refuge in the one who has the power to preserve us through our suffering. There will be tribulations. In fact, there's a great one coming upon this earth. I don't know if we're going to be here for it or not. I think we should prepare for it, though. Jesus guaranteed we would have troubles. So when we understand this, we will be better prepared for their arrival. Let me go to Psalm 71, verse 19 through 21. Also your righteousness, O God, is very high. You who have done great things, O God, who is like you? You who have shown me great and severe troubles shall revive me again, and bring me up again from the depths of the earth. You shall increase my greatness and comfort me on every side. Let me go to Matthew 6, verse 34. Jesus said, Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Don't try to worry about tomorrow. How about 2 Thessalonians 1, verses 6 through 8? And this says, "Since it is a righteous thing with God to repay with tribulation those who trouble you, and to give you who are troubled rest with us when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven with his mighty angels." And let me finish with John 16:33. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. This was Jesus talking. He said, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And since God is in me, Jesus is in me, and he's overcome the world, then guess what? I've already overcome it too, and so have you. In the King James Version of this, it says you'll have tribulation. Singular, tribulation. Okay? I just want each and every one of you to know that as we approach the return of Christ, there will be that 7-year tribulation period. The first 3.5 years will seem somewhat peaceful, but the last 3.5 years will be the worst time on the face of the earth. I don't know if we'll be raptured out of here or not. Many believe we will. I hope and pray that we will, but I think we should all prepare as if we won't be. God protected the Israelites in the desert for 40 years, fed them, gave them water, gave them shelter. He protected Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the very heart of a furnace. They didn't get burned or singed or even smell like smoke. God is huge, and he's bigger than any tribulation will come upon this world, and you need to trust in him always. Okay? There's no trouble coming upon us that God can't help us through. Right? So, I want to encourage you to remain faithful, remain strong, encourage each other, lift each other up, help each other. Be there for someone else. You know, you may be the only Bible some people ever read. Think about that. God bless you. Good Lord willing, I hope to see you again tomorrow.